Hello everyone. I decided to do a recording specific to showing you how a gun build is done, rather than try to continue telling you why I don't do certain things. It's pretty clear people are still going to do it, no matter what I say, so let me just go ahead and show you how it's done, and then we'll get into some other builds. Okay, so when it comes to the gun builds, you can always assume 1 equals 16.67 milliseconds. So for example, Monolithic Suppressor is +1, which means it's going to add 16.67 milliseconds. If there is a number set or data set telling you otherwise, then you just take that. But this is just to get you within roughly the target area, as you will see with where is it? This skeleton stock is -1 on the Bruen Mk9, which comes out 16 milliseconds. So you can see that was within 67 milliseconds. Well, 0.67 milliseconds, excuse me. So you can see it got really, really close, and it's very, very safe to assume that 1 equals 16.67. Now, as far as the other attachments are concerned, the Reflex Hollow, Cronin C480, and VOK 3 times are less than 1. The problem is that attachments are always going to be different with each gun. It's near impossible to determine precisely which gun has which ADS time with that specific attachment. So all I can do is assume less than 1, because I know it's going to be less than 1. For that reason, I always assume 8.335 milliseconds, because it's half of 16.67. One other thing I kind of want to point to in terms of the millisecond time on ADS, this is something to be aware of. There are unique attachments that do defy the normal rules, or at least the normal numbers. So the Void Grip on the Grau is -1, while Stippled Grip is -2 on a lot of guns. So that means Void Grip is only going to reduce your ADS time, well, I should say make it faster, by 16.67 milliseconds. Stippled Grip on most other guns will increase that time by 33.34 milliseconds. So as you can see, the Grau is already at a disadvantage because its unique attachment is already less than the other attachments. This is why I stress so hard that you just simply cannot listen to the pros. This includes TP, this includes Swag, Nick Merckx, and many of the others that I can list. Because all these people are doing is they are looking at the attachment loadout page. That's not going to give you specifics like this right here. You have to be careful of this. That attachment page is not going to give you the specific number sets like this. So please be aware of that. And we'll get back to the Monolithic Suppressor in a minute. But the last number set I want to point out is Sleight of Hand. It's going to be -40. Well, I should say it reduces your reload time by 40 to 50%. So it could be a number between 40 and 50. It could be 41, it could be 42, it could be 43. You just don't know. It always depends on the gun. Oh yeah, and I was doing some AK math because I was redoing the build, but you can see that there's a difference between the RPK and Romanian Barrel. So Romanian Barrel is 15 millisecond faster, or 15 millisecond slower ADS time for a bit more recoil control, which I don't think is necessary. The RPK is actually enough recoil control for the AK in my opinion, but different story. Okay, so now that we've gotten the math out of the way, let me just quickly go back over the Monolithic Suppressor. I can't stress it enough. I've said in multiple recordings, and people are still in the comments saying, let's put a Monolithic Suppressor on every damn gun. Well, I hate to break it to you, but the Monolithic Suppressor is +1, which means it's adding 16.67 milliseconds to the ADS time. On top of that, it's also an attachment slot. Attachment slots are very, very important. So I don't see a need to be changing the math of the build to that extreme, because the only thing that can negate the 16.67 add-on is either going to be an FFS close quarter stock, a stippled grip, or tack laser. They're the only 3 attachments that you'll find on most guns that can negate that 16.67. In addition to that, there's another reason I don't see a point in doing it. A lot of the guns that have extreme ranges, like the Bruen Mk9, PKM, and those, they're shooting people at distances where it does not matter at that point. At that range, you aren't going to be showing up on a person's radar or whatever excuse people come up with these days. Okay? At 46 meters, which is the PKM effective range, the odds of somebody seeing you is going to be very slim. If you are going to be at, let's just say, 20 meters or less, then okay, fine. I can see a suppressor being a thing at that range, because now you're so close in proximity to everybody else within that area that you will be detected. Now, I do understand it's player preference, but at the same time, I just pointed out the reasons why I don't use Monolithic Suppressor. If you want to do it, be my guest, but you're going to be the one doing the math, because I'm not going to do it. So, with that rant out of the way, I went ahead and did some newer builds and rechecked some of my older builds, so you could see how the math is done. It came to my attention that the Stippled Grip for the LMGs, well, particularly Bruen and PKM, is actually -1, not -2, like ARs and SMGs, which does actually make sense in a way. So for now, I'm just going to assume -1 on the Stippled Grip for those guns until I can find more concrete evidence to suggest that it is indeed -1 or -2. But moving on. I still don't agree with the Fennec. The Fennec is a very odd gun, but you can see I did a build anyways, because I know that likely people aren't going to listen to me anyways, so I might as well just go and do a build so they at least do it right and while not listening to me. But you can see that I've determined that the drum magazine only reduces movement speed. The ZLR Saber is what the build needs. It brings the ADS time out to 250 milliseconds, which is actually quite slow for an SMG. So then I went ahead and put Stippled Grip on it to get it down to 216. Sleight of Hand is there, of course, because at that point it's very necessary with that RPM and magazine size. You can see it's 2.17 seconds without, Sleight of Hand 1.24 with. So the Fennec absolutely needs Sleight of Hand. At this point, I've determined that a 1 milliwatt laser or Ranger 4 grip is what you could do with the last remaining attachment slot. Ranger 4 grip does reduce the vertical as well as horizontal, so in this case I do see it as being a better option than Merc 4 grip with a Fennec, just so you're able to hit those more distant shots. Well, quote-unquote distant. I mean, it's only, 14 meter range at this point, so it's really whatever at this point. I guess you could do the Merc 4 grip as well, but yeah, so there's a reason this build is not doing any barrels. I disagree with Ace's video where he was saying to do the 16-inch barrel with the ZLR Saber. It's because the ADS time on the Fennec would be so extreme at that point that there's no real reason to do it. There are other SMGs like the P90 which already have a ridiculous amount of range and aren't affected by a huge ADS penalty when doing it. Another thing too is that at that point you might as well just get the RAM, because the RAM is actually a really great close quarters AR. It's extremely effective at shredding enemies at close range. Plus, its base range is, I think, 26 meters. I can double check that. So, without a barrel, the RAM is 26 meters, whereas this is only 14 meters, I think, with the ZLR Saber. One other thing to note, too, with the barrels is I've noticed this, and Ace has as well. Ace has mentioned it in his videos in the past. Longer barrels do hurt the hipfire accuracy or control. Because the Fennec should be used as a close quarters weapon, a longer barrel will hurt its ability to hipfire. So there you have it. But let's go ahead and quickly page over to my additional Warzone builds so you can see this for yourself. You'll notice that the Kilo, I've actually changed its build around to complement people's needs or whatever. You can see I did do a Monolithic Suppressor on this one, but you'll see that I only did that for comparison's sake to the Growl, because people are going to build the Growl they're just going to copy I should say they're just copying the pros at this point. You're not going to convince a Growl user to not run a pro build. Well, pro in their mind. But anyways, you can see that with the Kilo's updated build, it's 291.985 milliseconds. So the ZLRA Saber already brings it up to 250. If you add the 16-inch barrel, that's going to bring it up to about that. So you're already running at AR ADS speed. Now, for comparison's sake, let's go and look at the P90, which is sitting at 217.37 milliseconds with its Pro Barrel and Monolithic Suppressor. So you can see that the P90 does this whole range thing a lot better and more efficiently. But that's because the P90 is actually capable of running 2 stippled grips, which is -4. That's a pretty crazy number to deal with. But yeah, so you can see its range is about 20.425 meters once we put the barrel on and Monolithic Suppressor. This is why I built the Fennec that way. But anyways, let's go back to this. Let's keep going through these builds so you can see this. I determined that the PKM with the 25.9-inch barrels, 467 millisecond ADS time, and Bruen's 44 with the 23-inch barrel based on Ace's video. So you can see here's the math for the PKM. So I determined snatch grip is -2, stipple is -1, Cronin or VOK is less than 1, plus sleight of hand is that time. So I determined that by the time that I've reduced the ADS from this, these sets of numbers, I got 41.675, so I just took that and subtracted it from 467. I got 425 through 25 ADS time with that. With the sleight of hand here, I just want to quickly explain why I'm doing this. This is exactly what I was talking about with not needing to do Monolithic Suppressor on every damn build. It's because sleight of hand is no penalty. The no penalty is reducing your reload time by a pretty good chunk. So I do see this as being a better attachment slot than the Monolithic. The Monolithic Suppressor is only plus 7.5% range, which really is not that much in the grand scheme of things. You're already talking about a weapon with a 46 meter effective range. There's really not much of a need to go beyond that. So yeah, moving on to the Bruen build. Bruen is where things get a little bit different. I do think the way the Bruen attachments were done is a bit overpowering, and you can see that for yourself here. Because look at how many bonuses you're getting. Basically, your 60 round mags is -3, which is -50 millisecond ADS time, plus 3% movement speed, and it reduces the reload down to 1.69 seconds. You're essentially getting free movement speed, crap ton of ADS time, and essentially the equivalent of sleight of hand all in one frickin' attachment. Okay, that's just the 60 round magazine. The skeleton stock is 16 milliseconds plus 15% ADS movement speed. Like, WTF. Stippled is -1, as we were pointing out earlier, Cronin or VOK, yada yada. So you can see that I got 74.335 millisecond ADS time after the reduction from the Optic. So you can see that I've gotten a much better ADS time reduction through attachments on the Bruen than I did with the PKM, which brings its ADS time down to 409.665 milliseconds. But that's a 60 round magazine. Notice I haven't changed the belt mag on the PKM. So the PKM is actually doing a better job than the Bruen when it comes to using a bigger belt magazine. With a belt magazine, the Bruen would not be able to beat the PKM for ADS time. So there's that. Now, I'm waiting on Ace to do his video for the Amax, but we'll just go ahead and quickly cover it. So you can see kind of where I'm thinking things, and so that way when it does come time to do the Amax build, then you'll understand where I'm going with a lot of this. So the Amax does have a unique stock, the CR56XO, and its stippled grip is worded differently. It's stippled wrap instead of stippled grip, which I'm going to guess is going to be like the XRK Void, which is the growl's attachment for the grip. If it's going to be like the XRK Void from the growl, then it's going to be a -1. So I've just assumed -1 for both. And of course, I know the numbers for Cronin or VLK to a certain degree, so that's going to be less than 1. I assumed 45 round magazine at 6% because that's what the AK's ADS reduction or penalty is. The AK, when it's using its 40 round magazine, is 6% of the ADS speed, so that's 16.8 milliseconds for the AMAX. It's going to be different for the AK. At this point, assuming that I've done everything correct and I've guessed, all this correctly, I've determined 8.205 is the bonus ADS that I've gotten out of all of this. So it really didn't reduce it didn't make the ADS speed time any faster, really. But we can assume that from prior attachments, that if this is going to be the reduction, we get 271.795 before the barrel's in. With the AMAX, you do want to use the longest barrel. One thing that I'm starting to quickly notice with the AMAX is it has a slower bullet velocity than some of the other ARs, even with its longest barrel. You do want the longest barrel not just for that bullet velocity, but also the increased range. The AMAX has an incredible amount of range for an AR, as far as I'm able to tell. Not only that, it has a much higher RPM than the AK. If I remember right, the AMAX is 640 RPM or something like that. And the AK is 561. Based on that, it's pretty easy to tell that the AMAX will have a faster time to kill than the AK, because both the AK and the AMAX do the same bullet damage. The difference is in our RPM, 561 versus I think 640, which will make it so that the AMAX does have a faster time to kill than the AK. That does not mean that the AK is outclassed, though, because a good portion of the player base is free to play. They're not going to have multiplayer to grind out the guns. The AK has been ground loot on and off before, so if people can grind out the AK, they're still getting a decent gun. It's just going to take some getting used to. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at with all this. I want to quickly just go ahead and go back to the Google document real quickly to kind of finish this up. Or no, I'm sorry, that's right, the chart. That's where I meant to go. Okay. On top of stressing why I don't do the Monolithic Suppressor for most guns, I want to also stress why optics are important. This is Ace's chart. If you look under these lines right here, you'll see that it tells you the numbers for 1 plate, 2 plates, or 3 plates. But if you look under each category, it will say STK, which is shots to kill, and then time to kill. Now, the shots to kill is very important to look at, as well as all the other things. Although I would put it on a lower priority than some of the other numbers. Anyways, I would like to point this out. The Kilo and Grau are the exact same at 9 shots to kill for 3 plates. But notice that the RPM is different. It's 779 versus 750. And as I pointed out earlier, the Kilo with even a Monolithic Suppressor still has a better ADS time than the Grau. So you're getting better ADS time and better RPM. But notice that I have an optic on both builds. I'm doing an optic because while you can guesstimate or connect with a target on iron sights, it's still going to cause you to guess. If it takes you more than 9 bullets to knock a person with the growl or the kilo, then that means you guessed way too much. You're wasting shots at that point. That's why I consider a optic to be mandatory for any weapon with 25 meter or greater range. It's to make sure that you're not guessing, making the most of every bullet. Not only that, it's much easier to tell if you're aimed at their head or not. If you can score at least one headshot in addition to a couple body shots, this number from here will go down. As you can see here, if you can mix a headshot with a chest shot, it brings it from 9 shots to 6, which is a pretty good reduction. Because if you look at how many kills people have gotten in Warzone, especially in the tournaments, you're looking at 26 kills on some players. So think about that. If you take 26 by 3, because that's how many bullets that you've saved by hitting the head and torso. So let's just do the math for this real quickly. Assuming my phone wants to cooperate. Come on, phone. I'm clicking the arrow. No. I don't want Chrome. Come on. There we go. Okay, so let's just say your average savings, or I should say your savings is 3, and you times that by 26 targets, you've saved 78 bullets, is what that comes down to. An optic is so important. It doesn't matter if you can hit with the iron sights. It's an advantage no matter how you slice or no matter how you justify it. It's an advantage in ability to see if you're getting headshots. It's a visual advantage. You're able to see your target long before they're able to see you. And a bunch of other benefits that I could list. So, again, please quit using iron sights. I assure you, as good as an iron sight is, it doesn't matter. You are getting so many bonuses for just taking the time to figure out a build with an optic. It's something I shouldn't even have to rant about. It should be acknowledged at this point. One other thing, too, I kind of want to point out while we're on this tangent is the S87. This is one of the few LMGs that I've noticed is an exception to a lot of things. The S87 takes 7 shots to kill on 3 armor plates. S87, as far as I can tell, does maintain the -2 on its stippled grip. That means that the S87 does indeed act like an AR, but it's an AR on roids because it's able to hit at 46 meters effective range without a barrel attachment. So if you are going to have such a hard-on for Monolithic Suppressor, go to the S87. You'll be getting good range, good time to kill, and good ADS times for an LMG. At that point, you can fit a Monolithic Suppressor pretty easy. On my S87 build, I put a compensator on it because, again, I don't see a point in doing a Monolithic Suppressor for a gun with 46 meter range. But if you are absolutely going to do it on the S87. That's all I have. Thanks for listening.